Okay, good morning. We're up to Lamed Beis Amid Aleph. We're up to 3 lines down, V'cheres Hadradyani. So going back to the Mishnah, I'd like to do a little bit, guys. Let's do a little bit from the Mishnah on Chaf Tes Amid Beis. And the cheres of dradyani, v'oiris levuvim, and skin around the heart. The psukim only makes a difference. This mansha keres shaloi ugel, if it's round, asur, because we'll say that the guy pulled it out for Avodah Zorah. Mashach, if it's a slit, muta. Basa nichnas levet sichav muta. Okay, vayotza asa. We'll see that Bez Hashem. I want to go a little bit weiter. A noidai saivit kechavim v'kankanim. The leather, the noides, the leather or the barrels of yayin of kechavim, konis behem asurim v'isuria sahana. The wine, if a Jew stores wine in that, it's asur and sasir sahana. Remeya v'chachamim. That's remeya v'chachamim. Okay, just 1 second. If you look at Rashi, Konis behem, Hichnis behen yayin lekiyam, you put in there for lekiyam. Okay, we'll get back to that. I don't know why pedagogically I just made a boo-boo. Anyway, what is Cheres Hadradyani? That is Asa Bahana, Lamed Beis, 5 lines down. My Hadrani, Rabbi Yehuda, Shmuel, Cheres Hadrayanis Kesar. It's the earthenware of Hadrian, the Caesar. Hadrian was an awful Russia, and these earthenware kalim were named after him. Kiyasar of Dimi Amar, Karka Besula Hoisa, Shaloi Avda Adam Yalam. It was karka that was never worked, so it had very powerful nutrients. Finata, they would plant grapes there. V'ramile Lachamra, and they would then place the wine. The Gulpe Chivare, in white earthenware, and it would absorb the wine. They would break it up into different pieces. And Roman soldiers, they would carry these pieces with them. And whenever they would want to go ahead, they would go ahead and soak them in water. And the wine that was absorbed in the walls of the earthenware kli would come out, and they would have wine. Okay? And not only was it undiluted, Amr Bishur ben Levi, Rishon Shalonu, our quality, our number one quality, Kishlishi Shalahen, is like their third. I guess if they would go ahead and they would be shari 3 times, Rashi says, the first 2 times were so outstanding, even the 3rd time was as good as our best. So this special kalim they had, these kalim that absorbed, and they absorbed in their whole potency. They absorbed in the potency, and they would go ahead and put in very, very powerful wine. And if therefore you have these things, they would be what? Asa, they would be asa b'ana. These things would be asa b'ana. Of course, again, you're going to take wine out of them. Okay. Ibailahu. Ma'u lismach behen kari amita. What can you go ahead and take these shards and use them to go ahead and support a mita? Now, what's the shaila? What's it predicated upon? It's predicating on the lashon ratza b'kiyumay al yedei davar acher shari ayasa. If you want its kiyum to be al yedei davar acher or not, is it permitted or not? So the Torah tells us the following: state in the Torah, in Perik Yud Beis in Devarim, Abei ta'abdun es kol ha'makayim asher avdu shem hagoyim. Destroy all the places that the goyim serve Avodah Zorah. Asher atem yoshim esam es esam es Elohayim al harim haramim. Their guards on the mountains, gal gavois in the valleys, v'tachas kol seitz on the hills, v'tachas kol seitz ranan. And he touched them es mechaysam. You should break their mizbechos. V'shibartem es matzevasam. You should break down their matzevos. You should burn their trees that they serve. You should cut down. Like Sasu Kain Lashem Elokechem. So this is the issue of not erasing Hashem's name. So there's an inyan of that. Not only destroy Avodah Zorah, you should not even have the Shem Avodah Zorah in this world. So it's usher, therefore, to want to keep it around. You want to keep it around, but let's say you want to keep it around, but not for the Avodah Zarah itself, or for something else. So you're keeping these shards of earthenware. You're not interested whatsoever in the content of the yayin that's absorbed inside. You're interested in being its physical ability to support a bed. But if it's usher, then you won't be able to use it, because why do I want to keep this around? I want to keep it around, even though I don't need the etzem wine. But keeping it around, even though it's not for the etzem wine, it's still over on the issue of what? Of destroying and not keeping it in the world. Or no, that's the shaila. That's the shaila over here. What does a person want to do? Rashi says, Ayidei davar acher, Yisrael roitze b'kiyumo shel yayin nesech. A person wants the yayin nesech to be around, v'lei b'shviloi, but not because of the yayin nesech, el b'shvil acheres ulis micha. The cheres, and to go ahead, what and go ahead and be supportive. So that's the shaila. That's the shaila. So, and for the Gemara, Tashma, the Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yochanan, Chad Aser, one says it's Aser, the Chad Shari, and one says it's Mutter, and the halacha is like the one who says it's Aser. Okay, so in other words, ad kedei kach, to get rid of the Avodah Zorah and not want it around, even if you want it around for some other reason, it would still be Aser. Mesivei hadar doirin jars v'harukvois and bottles shalav dekachavim and yayin shel Yisrael konis behem, and the yayin Yisrael is konis behem asa b'shtia umuta b'hana. It's asa b'shtia, but it's muta b'hana. Now over here, this apparently is like the chachamim. We go back to the Mishnah on Chav Tes, parallel to the Taisus Yishtu Yayin, and one line below. The jars of Ovid Kechavim, the Kankanim, the Yayin Shel Yisrael, Konis Behem, Asurim, B'Yisur Isahana. Divrei Meya, the Chachamim Maimim, Any Sur Isahana. In other words, it's Asa B'Shtia, but it'll be Mutabana. And Rashi says Lashon Konos means Lakiyum. It's in there for the purpose of keeping it around. So Mesivei Bayos. Hadadarin Baharakovos. I touched these bottles. No, in the Mishnah it's a wet leather. Hadadarin Baharakovos. Shalav Dekachavim. Yain Shal Yisrael Konos Ben Asa B'Shtiyam with the Bana. So this is not Reb Meir. Reb Meir would say it's Asa even Afilu Behana. This is the shittas of the Chachamim, right? This is the shittas of the Chachamim. Hey, it's Shimon ben Gaida, Lifnei Benoi, Shel Rebbe Gamliel, Al Rebbe Gamliel, Shesasam Yimenu Ba'akai, right? That he drank Jewish wine that had been contained in the Gaisha bottles. He drank it in Akov, but they weren't moida that this ever transpired. Noidish Alevid Kechavim, the Noidish of now. Right now, we don't have a kasha. Again, we're going to ask a kasha that you said that it's mutter. One person says it's mutter. The kiyam al yedei davar acher is mutter. We're asking on that shita. But so far, all we have is a story going according to the shitas of the chachamim. That in fact, that if you have water, if you have wine in barrel in certain containers and you keep it there, it's mutter b'shtia. It's mutter b'ana asa b'shtia, like the shitas chachamim. So now you have noidos noidos are leather pouches of Avodah Kechavim. Rabbi Yeshua ben Kapusoi. Asu lasas behem shtichim lechamar. Let's say you'd take out the wine. You have wine absorbed in the walls, and now I want to go ahead and I want to keep what? I want to keep the leather. What do I want to keep the leather for? I'm going to use it as a saddle blanket for a donkey. So l'chayra, this is the exact same thing as using the cheres hadradyoni for bed supports. I don't care about the wine. I care about the physical aspect of it. And we had two opinions. One said it's asa, one says it's mutter. We're asking on the opinion that says that what? That it's mutter. Because it says over here, it's asa to go ahead and use it for a saddle blanket. I don't need the wine. So l'chayra, you see that even though you don't need the wine, it's also to keep it around because there's wine in there. So just like there, it's also by the cheres hadradyani. So why did the man the Amar who said that it's mutter again? Machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yochanan. We don't know who said what, but why is the when the Amar Rabbi Eliezer or Rabbi Yochanan who said it's mutter? We have they're Amaroyim. You have a Mefurish Tanoic statement that it's also. So the kasha is from these words. Again, one more time. You have a case over here. You have wine absorbed inside walls. There's a mitzvah to get rid of it. Get rid of that wine, right? But I don't need it for that wine. I don't need it for the wine. I need it for something else. Can you use it or not? That's kiyum. It's a mitzvah to get rid of him, to get rid of everything. Abe tabdun, get rid of it, right? So I can't keep it around. Why can I keep it around for something else? That's the shaila. Machlokes. One says mutter, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yochanan. We don't know who says. One says mutter, one says asa. And therefore we have a shaila by kroya amita. Therefore we have the same shaila, just like by bed supports, a saddle blanket for a donkey. You're going to use a leather bag that had been absorbed in its side, and it was yayin. It was absorbed inside of it, and there, since I see it's asa by the leather bag, and this is a Tanoic statement, and no one seems to argue on it, it seems to be difficult. Like the Mandiyamu says, it's what? It's mutter. Fred the Gemara v'hahacha the roitze b'kiyumu al yidei davar acher. Right, I want the leather. I want the wine around because I want to use it as a saddle for a donkey. The ketani the aser, so it's shver like the man. They always said it's mutter. Fred the Gemara l'taimech kankanim shaloy b'kechovim. You have these kankan barrels for Avodah Zorah. Litzru lemizvin. Right, we should be usher to sell, and people will go ahead and they use them all the time. Right, they would use them for everything except the Ritva says they use them for anything except to store wine. But they use them. But you should have the same problem of what? Of keeping them around, since absorbed in the walls of Avodah Zarah is wine. What's the difference between the leather that you can't, and what's the difference between a kankanim, a barrel that you could? Yes? In other words, guys, take a look at me. You have a shaila, my head is a shaila about kari amita, using the Hadrianic cheres for that. Right? And the shaila is predicated upon what? Whether roitza kiyum l'beyav acher, because I'm supposed to get rid of it. On one hand, I have noidai saying no, you can't go ahead and use it for a donkey, and the other one says kankanim. No, I can buy barrels that have been used to store wine. So there's wine absorbed in the walls. So you want to ask a kasha from here from what? From leather nodes. I have a raya from earthenware kankanim. That's the Gemara's kasha. So why does Gemara say Ella Amarava? What's the reason? Really, Roitza Yidei Dava Acher is mutter. Really, Roitza Yidei Dava Acher is mutter. So guys, therefore, listen. I could use the shards of the Hadrianic cheres. I could use it for a bedpost because it's mutter. So if it's mutter, what's the problem with the leather? That's the side that it's aser. And Gezei Rishem Yibaka Noidai. You know, we're worried about the noid. It's going to crack and break. V'yetlena, you're then going to take it. V'yesperena al gabe noidai, and you'll go ahead and sew it and use it as you have a leather flask. It cracked, and you store your wine in there. So what do? In those days, they don't throw it out and buy a new one. What would they do? They would use a patch. So you know what I'm worried about? You're going to take the noid that was from Ovid Kechavim that has absorbed in it yayin nesech or stam yainam. You're going to use it now as a patch, and therefore you have a problem of what? Of you absorbing from it, right? That's the problem. Mashen came by the kankan, but you're not worried about that, so that's the difference. So enochinami, it's mutter, and therefore you could use the shards of the cheres hadradyani. You could use. Why? Because kiyum al-yidei v'acher is mutter. Over here, I'm not worried about the acher. I'm worried about the etzem yayin. I'm worried about the etzem yayin being absorbed in my wine. That's the problem. And that's the difference between the noid and the kankan. That's the difference between the noid and the kankan. Nachamal. El Amarava, Gezerah, you know what you're worried why the noid, you can't use it? Shema, really, you should be able to use it as a saddle blanket for your donkey. But Shema Yibaka Noidai, your noid that has kosher wine in it, it's going to crack. Lena, and you'll take a piece from the Oived Kichavim leather, and you'll go ahead and sew it onto yours, and therefore it'll go ahead and be absorbed. Okay, so that's like the man the mitzvah. Okay, now we had a man the says it's asa. Again, it's machlokes Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Yochanan. Well, the man the writes the b'kiyuma day dover acher asa ma'ishna kankanim that it's muta the shari. Right? Why is it? In other words, guys, you're telling me that using the shards is asa. Using the shards is asa. Why? Because rotza kiyuma day dover acher. I want it around. It's no good. So why is kankanim good? Why could you go ahead and buy kankanim? L'chayra, you good. You don't want the yayin inside of it, but you want something else. Amla chasam lesa leisura be'ena. Over there, it's not really there. Hacha isyil isura be'ena. Over here, by the cheres hadradani, it's really what? It's still there. Okay, let's make a chilik between the two. You go ahead and you buy stam a barrel. The barrel's been used, it's been empty for months. It's been empty a really, really long period of time. What's the chashash? If you put wine in it and you keep wine in it for a long enough period of time, we'll say the wine that is inside the walls will come out. Really, be'emes, in halachas of Yeridea, in Belias that are absorbed in a wall, you never have a problem when it's cold. The problem is when it's hot. So l'chayra, hot brings out the absorption of the wall. So why could you not use the barrels of goyim? What are you worried about? And the answer is you may keep it for storage. That's why Rashi said in the Mishnah kiyuma, because when you put it inside and you keep it, even though it's cold, but it's there for a certain period of time, like 24 hours, it's considered what? Okay, it's considered it comes out. So that's a regular barrel. These hadrianic pieces, these weren't made for keeping past. These were made etzem. In other words, the type of cheres used and the amount of wine that was shayra, it's considered as if the wine was totally out. It's considered if the wine is totally out. So it's considered if it's there. It's be'en. Again, that's you want it. You're putting it in water and it's coming out. Ad kedei kach, we said even the third, keeping it. When you toivel it, the third dipping. That's not the word I want. There's a word. When you keep it, you're keeping it absorbed, right? You're keeping it in the water the third time, right? What are you doing? Like password. What are you doing? Anyway, so good. You're just as old as I am. You can't figure the words either. So the third time you're going ahead and keeping it, it's inside the water. What's the talk? God, help me out here, somebody. You're
immersed.
Immersed is the word, right? The third immersion is going to go ahead. Thank you, Harold. The third immersion is going to keep it what? It's so fine that it's going to be like our best wine. So obviously the wine that's in those walls is really there. Memela, if that's really there, that's why it's asa. But the reason why kankanim is mutabana, it's not really there. What do you have? You have a tam of wine there. Tam of wine, I'm not going to be geyser. Masha enken, if you have really over there. So therefore the Gemara concludes it's geschmack. Okay? So we have a machlokes whether things that have absorbed wine in it, yayin nesech or stam yenim in it, could you use for something else? That's a machlokes. Right? What's the problem using it for something else? Because you want the yayin around, because I want the physical thing around. Like I want the leather around, I want the piece around. We have machlokes. The one says it's muta. We have to answer up leather. Why is leather asa? It's a gezerah. Not because you may come not to use the leather, you may come to use the actual wine that's absorbed in it. May come out into yours when you use it as a patch. Like the man the Omer that it's asa, so we understand leather. We don't understand why kankanim is muta. And now we're explaining why kankanim is muta is because it's not really around. It's not the end. Masha came. You know why it's asa by using the hadrianic pieces? It's because the wine is so there. When it's immersed in water, it comes out. Therefore, what it's considered asa. Very geschmack. Now, in what we just said above, we said that they wanted to say that Rabbi Gamliel, he drank the wine. Hey, it's Shimon ben Gudel, if they benoy shel Rabbi Gamliel, al Rabbi Gamliel shesasa mimenu ba'akai lehoydaloi, that he drank wine, Jewish wine that had been in Goyisha, bottles that he drank from it. Okay, therefore, and they weren't invited to that. Okay, uriminu alesu astira, yain haba birakuvois shel oivdei kechavim, yain that comes in the rukavois are the bottles of goyim, asa b'shtia umuta b'hana, and hey, it's Shimon ben Guda lefnei b'nai shel Rabbi Gamliel al Rabbi Gamliel shesasam imenu ba'ako v'hodalo. That here before we said lo hodalo, they weren't makabel, and here hodalo they were makabel. Here they were makabel. My loy hodaloi. And for the Gemara, how do you answer the stira? The first one, they weren't hoida, here they were moida. My lo hodaloi the kamar hasam is called sayatai avl benoi moidalei. Okay, there it's like hoidai. They weren't. Over here, you're gonna be gairis hoida, not hoida, not hoidai, but hoida. Change the girsa. That there it's not a stira. Over there we're speaking about what them, and over here we're speaking about his son. They weren't maida, but his son was maida. They weren't maida, but his son was maida. Right? Or Iba Yasema, it's two different people. It's Yeshua ben Guda with an aleph, and one was Yeshua ben Gaidea with an ayin. So it's not a stira, it's two different people reporting on the incident that took place. Now, like the tzad, that Rabbi Gamliel did drink this, right? What's the difference then on Mishnah? Guys, look on Mishnah. Guys, look back in the Mishnah. Again, the same spot. Now, the Lashon be medayik, the Lashon konas behem, asurim b'suris hana. Rashi says konas behem, hichnis ben yayin lekiyum. You put it in there for kiyum. Good. What's the Lashon by us? Urimini. What 5 lines up? Yayin haba b'rekuvois salev dekachavim. Doesn't say konos, it says haba. You're transporting, right? It doesn't say konos, it says haba. Says some Seifer guys, Gevald Gediak. Konos is mashma, you're keeping it in there. Why do we speak out, fellas? How is it possible for wine, if it's cold, to get absorbed? It's because since you kept it in there, it's going to, over time, the wine that's absorbed will come into your wine. What about if it's for a short period of time? You're just transporting it. Then it's not. So therefore, that's why Rabbi Gamliel drank it. The chilik of the beautiful chilik of the Chasam Seifa. That case in our Mishnah where everyone says it's asa b'ashtiya, even the Chachamim say it's asa b'ashtiya, is because nichnis l'kiyum, as Rashi said, and therefore you had time for the coldness to go ahead, seep out, and go in. Mashe'en kain over here haba. It means it's just coming, it's being transported. It's not going to be in there for such a long period of time, l'kiyum. Therefore, Rabbi Gamliel drank it, a very geshmak achilik between the two. Guys, you with me? It's not rocket scientist stuff. It's geshmak. Okay. Now, the Mishnah said, Oiris levuvim. Oiris levuvim, we said there was a time, they did a terrible thing. They would go ahead. So Oiris levuvim, they would go ahead and they would cut it open, rip it out, Avodah Zorah, asa b'hana. The skin around is asa b'hana. Rav Shimon made a chilik between how the cut was. Was it an oval cut or a slit? Okay, Tana Rabbanan, Eza or Lavav, Kol Shekareya Keneged Alev. You went ahead, you cut opposite the heart, the Kador, and you make a round circle, Kemin Aruba, like a window. Yeshulav Karidam, if there's dam on it, a Karidam, then Asar. Then it's Asar, because you know for sure it was done when it was still alive. It was ripped when it was still alive. Amid Beis. Ain't love karidam. If there's no drop of blood on it, then mutter. Because Rashi says, Achahav shatai irabai. After you skinned it, that's when it happened. And therefore, in other words, if you ripped it out when it's alive, there's going to be blood. If there's no blood, then it was ripped. It was skinned afterwards. So that's the way of knowing whether it was what for the shem of Avodah Zarah. Amar Rav Huna leishanu, this thing of that it's mutter. If there's no blood, yishalei molchu. If it wasn't tanned yet. Aval molchay, if it was salted and tanned, asar, I'll say it's asur because ema malchay havi rasai. So in other words, I'll say the act of tanning removed the blood. So in other words, there's a chilik, but this whole din of there's no blood there that it's mutter is provided it wasn't tanned. If it was tanned, it would be asa, because we have to take into account that perhaps there was blood, it was ripped open when it was alive, and therefore the reason there's no blood is because the tanning process removed the blood. The chilik between a circle and a slit. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, Shmuel, halach Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. The halach is like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Amle Abaya, halach mechal pligi. Says Abaya, halach mechal. Someone argues. L'chayr Rabbi Yosef. What are you telling me? There's no one arguing. Of course, the halach is like him. There's no one arguing with him. So Amalei, my nafkamina. Said Rabbi Yosef, my nafkamina. If someone's arguing with him, the halach is like him. If someone's not arguing with him, then certainly the halach is like him. So what's the nafkamina? Amalei Abai says, Gemara Gomez and Rasatei. Should Torah be what? Songs? Should Torah be songs? In other words, every word of Torah is holy. Every word is meduyak. You can't just say this one of pshatim. You can't just say what the halach is like him. Again, you don't say that because no one argues on him. But you have to be very meduyak. Okay, let's see the Mishnah. Let's go back again. A very long Mishnah. Chav Tes on and base. About 5-6 lines down. The meat that's going in, muta. If he's bringing meat into the house of Avodah Zorah, if you buy it from him there, it's muta. Vayotza asar, and that comes out is asar. Mifneshu kizivchei mesim. In other words, you shouldn't buy it from him. You may go give thanks, but the chayre before it gets there, it wouldn't have a shem avodah zarah. When it comes out, it has a shem avodah zarah, right? Okay. Rabbi Akiva. These are the words of Rabbi Akiva. Back in the Gemara. Mantana, Rabbi Rabbi Yochanan, the like Rabbi Eliezer, the Rabbi Eliezer, even on the way in, like Rabbi Eliezer, the machshava for Avodah Zarah would still be there, and mainly even going inside, it would be asa. By Yotza Asim, if they show Kizivchei Mesa, my timer, it's not possible that there wasn't a piece that they weren't served by the Zarah. Money. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseiri, it's Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseiri, the Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseiri Omer, Minayin leTakrubas Avodas Kechavim shemetame ba'oil. How do you know Takrubas Avodas Kechavim is metame ba'oil? Shneimar Yitzmdu lebal par. They were literally cleaving, gebunden, bound to the Baal par. V'yochlu zivchei mesim. Ma mes metame ba'oil. Af Takrubas Avodas Kechavim metame ba'oil. We said this by Yayin Nesach, right? So we said this by Yayin Nesach the other day. One of the three things. Yehuda Meseir said this then. So who did over here? He says that goes ahead what? A woodman metame. Okay, we'll stop over here.